Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. In the next 60 minutes, President Akufo-Addo admits the country's debt sustainability profile is in tatters, but it's unclear when an IMF deal will be secured.
Reaching an agreement with the board of the fund, which we hope to do very soon, will set the stage for the strong recovery of Ghana's economy.
We have details and also hear from former Finance Minister Seth Terkper, who has some answers.
That document would have to be agreed by government as it goes through Africa Department, which is our regional department, and then it may come back with questions and then work towards an agreement.
We have the very latest on the talks also with China and the Paris Club. Also tonight,
the place was a movie house. The apartment don't belong to them. They are not the owners of the apartment.
So we were in the car and then I gave him a physical cash of close to 30,000.
It's not easy for me, proud.
Fraudster alerts cybersecurity authorities tonight cautioning persons patronizing online services to get pictures of the ID cards of the service providers and also make payments through easily traceable systems like the bank.
Proof of identity that you can use to start an investigation. Don't just hand over cash or do a mobile transaction and that's it. What we'd recommend is to be able to go through a bank.
Also, we have details as an online swindler who defrauds unsuspecting persons under the guise of giving them rooms is still on the line. First, it was the ECG. Now the Ghana Water Company is taking its turn, going after its debtors to retrieve over 600 million cedis. We have details of today's exercise as the company retrieves over 1.7 million Ghana cedis from defaulters on day one of the exercise.
And in business, World Bank lowers Ghana's economic growth rate to almost 2%, far lower than what government is hoping to achieve this year.
And in sports, the Ghana Premier League takes center stage tonight when Kumasi Asante Kotoko hosts Ken Faisal in a Kumasi derby at the Raya Sports Stadium, with top four up for grabs for the Porcupine Warriors if they get the win.
And also we focus on doctors in the Ashanti regional capital who are set to picket Menchia to protest against a directive by the Ashanti Regional Coordinating Council to evict them and other government workers occupying Bangalore's own lands, released to the Asante Hene Otumfo say to the second. And also don't be fooled by plush frontage of eateries. That's the caution from environmental health officers at the AMA.
So it means you have made your entrance nice, but where the food is actually coming from is filthy. So we are going to
stage for a strong recovery of Ghana's economy.
Like the rest of the world, the reality of the fact is that our economy is in considerable economic difficulty, following the headwinds that continue to buffet the globe. Our balance of payments and debt sustainability profile have been disrupted and have further exposed the structural weaknesses of our economy. We've gone to the International Monetary Fund to seek its assistance to repair in the short term our public finances and restore our balance of payments, whilst we continue to work on the medium to long-term structural changes that are at the heart of our goal of constructing a resilient, robust Ghanaian economy and building a Ghana beyond aid. Reaching an agreement with the board of the fund, which we hope to do very soon, will set the stage for the strong recovery of Ghana's economy. All of us have a duty to help make sure we get back to the years of high economic growth, which characterized the years before the outbreak of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
That's President Akufo-Addo. Well, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper is predicting the end of May this year as the likely date in which the board of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, will approve a program for Ghana. We know that Fitch Solutions last week said Ghana's staff-level agreement with the fund will receive an executive board approval in the second quarter of this year. While speaking to the media on developments about the economy from his base in the USA, Mr. Terkper said the month of May is practically feasible.
The other one is the approval process. Even when we have completed the prior actions, and we have the agreements, especially the external debt restructuring, the entire document would have to be agreed by government as it goes through Africa Department, which is our regional department, and then it may come back with questions and then work towards, an agreement, at which point the memorandum of economic policy and the letter of intent will be signed by the Minister for Finance and the governor, and that means that the document is ready to go to the board. And so I think these are some of the considerations, which, may push us, into optimistically may, but official solutions, they also may have some intelligence that may be suggesting June.
As the former finance minister said, Tekwe, so where are we exactly on the negotiations? Presidential affairs correspondent Elton Brobe joins me on the line with further details on this. Elton, what exactly then are we learning?
So we have sources telling us that there appears to be some kind of agreement reached between governments on one side, the Chinese authorities on the other side, and of course the Paris Club on the other side. And for that reason, there's been some communication also between the Chinese authorities and the Paris Club. And we are likely to have a statement from the Paris Club between the 11th, anytime from the 11th of this month, communicating the acceptance of proposal by government. What is unclear is whether they will give the country full debt cancellation or they may move for some restructuring of a sort. But what the sources is telling us that there's some kind of an acceptance and agreement between government proposal relating to our debt with the Paris Club, and for that reason we should expect a statement hopefully on the 11th of this month communicating an arrangement reached between government and the Paris Club.
Okay, well, so when it comes to the Paris Club, that's what we know. But when it comes to the negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, we've heard Setekpe mention that maybe May. We're hoping to get it by the end of March. That did not happen. Listening to President Akufo-Addo, very unclear when exactly we are going to get it. But what exactly are we learning?
Yes, so the point is that the obstacle, in fact, apart from the ongoing discussions with the Paris Club, and then China on the other side, there was also the expectation that Ghana would present the approved tax revenue measures that had been agreed between the IMF team and the government of Ghana. And last Friday, Parliament passed the 3 revenue measures, which means that government has demonstrated that they are committed to respecting whatever conditions or program that they committed themselves to before the start of the program. With this out of the way, the source tells me that the Paris Club issue is indeed the only one that appears to stalling government of Ghana securing that deal with the IMF. And now we are being told that there's some kind of agreement or understanding between the two parties. And the 11th of April statement from the Paris Club will spell out the agreement reached and the way forward.
Thank you very much. That's our presidential affairs correspondent, Elton Brobe. Now, this is a story, the next story about to talk about is what most of you have been engaging us on, and is the fraudster alert. I would like to hear your thoughts, really, on this particular story. 055-1111-997, and Crispy K and the team will give me what you've been talking about also on our social media platforms on this particular issue. Share your experiences with us. Then we can help bust these fraudsters. And we know that an expert with the Computer Emergency Response Unit at the National Cyber Security Authority, Stephen Seshikujo, is tonight urging persons patronizing online services to get pictures of the ID cards of the service providers and also make payments through easily traceable systems like the bank. His comment comes after news that there is an online swindler on the loose in Accra defrauding people who want to rent apartments. The scammer brazenly takes unsuspecting victims to an apartment. He then hands over keys to a non-existent building to them and then take advance payment from them. Well, one of the victims in her early 30s was defrauded of close to 30,000 cedis. That's not all. Another man, Bright Ewusi, was also duped of more than 10,000 cedis. Maxwell Agbagba followed Bright Ewusi to the apartment the online tricksters used to scam him. Listen
I chanced upon the pictures of the...
I am in a car with one of the victims, Bright Ewusi. We are heading to Tantra Hills to see the apartment the online fraudsters used to scam him. The swindlers had taken pictures of the building and uploaded them on an online platform.
So I picked him up around Kodesh, and then we drove to the landlord's house. When we were about to get there, the landlord came out, in a haste, going somewhere. I was across like a man of God who was going to preach. And he said, he's been waiting for us for a very long time. So quickly, we should just sit in the car and then, sort everything out. He started asking me questions, why I go to church, where I work and all that. Very nice and calm man. So we gave the money to him, 15,600. He gave me a receipt. He gave some 2 keys to my wife and said that, she is the woman, so she should take the keys. He told me that the tenancy agreement will be ready. That's a Tuesday morning. So I should come to the house Tuesday morning to come and pick it up. It was a movie house.
Was a movie house?
Yes. I find out the house was a movie house. That was a Thursday morning. After I tried reaching him and I couldn't reach out. The place was a movie house. The apartment don't belong to them. They are not the owners of the apartment.
Bright Eusi is now on the phone speaking to another victim, 33-year-old event planner Ida Safoa. She saw Bright's story online and contacted him about how the same man defrauded her of close to 30,000 cedis after she tried to rent an apartment she saw online.
Landlord came out, was like, I'm in a hurry. I've been called to come to Tema for a surgery. You've kept long, so let's sit in my car and then run everything up so that I can go. I was like, okay, fine. And the way this man talks, he's like an angel. So my mom was like, hey, wait, when you're fear, papa, papa. So we sat in his car and there I gave him 20.
I'm saying that your landlord is, it's a good man.
Exactly, because of how he portrayed. So we were in the car and then I gave him a physical cash of 20,000. And then he was like, so when is he going to get the rest? And I was like, okay, close to 30,000.
9,000.
Security man Imano Dankwa had saved and borrowed money from friends to rent. He was also swindled by the same man who defrauded Bright Eusi and Ida Safoa.
Yes, it's not easy for me, Prao. I borrow some money, and one of mine, my daughter, to send me money, and I borrow some of the money, and I used to pay this money for the landlord.
Okay, can you hear me?
Bright Eusi tells me many others have contacted him that they have been swindled in the past by the same scammer using the same method. For now, he's on the loose, ready to pounce on his next victim.
Well, that's a Maxwell Agbagba's report. Thankfully, he joins me in the studio because since he puts out the story, we've had a number of people reaching out to him on this, the falling victim to this particular fraudster. Yeah. Tell us a bit more about what you found out, Agbagba.
Well, so for those who we've been interacting with, it's the same method this fraudster, this scammer, is actually using to dupe them of their money. In this particular case, he went to Tantra Hills to take a picture of the apartment, and I was at the apartment. Beautiful building, it's a duplex, nice building, and I'm told that he convinced the caretaker of that apartment that he was an agent. So there's an agent involved who is not a real agent, and then there's another person involved who is a landlord. So the man Bright Eusi is talking about, so 2 people involved now. The landlord, we're told, lives at North Kanishi. Okay. So on the day of the incident, the agent, on the day of the payment, the agent took Bright Eusi to North Kanishi to his supposed residence. But we are beginning to learn that where that fake agent took the man he told Bright Eusi was the landlord, it wasn't a place where anyone lived. It was actually a movie house. But Bright Eusi tells us that he was unable to tell that it was a movie house because there was no signboard or any sign indicating that it was a movie house. So what happened was just when they were getting closer to the residence, this supposed landlord quickly came out and said he's going somewhere, they have to do everything fast. So they didn't even get opportunity to sit at his residence. So they had to sit in the car and do all the transaction. One man who also rushed to Joy FM when he heard the story was one of them, a security man. He told me that he doesn't, in fact, he has saved for many years. He tells me that 9,000 cedis he has saved for many years just to rent an apartment, borrowed from friends, to get some 9,000 cedis to rent this apartment, and then he was scammed by this fraudster who is on the loose. We are told that he has not yet been arrested by the police. All the people we spoke to, they tell us that they reported the matter to the police, but it doesn't look like any real work is being done to arrest this scammer, this swindler who is still on the loose and on the run.
Well, I know you're still getting many calls, people reaching out to you on this, but we've been interacting with the National Cybersecurity Authority on this. Stephen Seshikujo, he's with the Computer Emergency Response Unit and is urgent person seeking to patronize these online services to, among others, ensure that you have pictures of the ID cards of the service provider and also make payments through easily traceable systems like the banks.
Rent or renting an apartment. One thing you can do is, after they've taken you around a supposed facility, you can go back on your own at a later time and check with the neighborhood, check with the people that live there, find out who actually owns the apartments you're interested in renting. And that will also assure you whether you are dealing with people who are just about to take your money or they actually do own the place. One thing we can recommend is when you are dealing with agents like this, try and get a view of the ID. They should give you, you can take a photo of the ID, take a photo of the person, the landlord as well, so that if something comes up, at least you have some proof of identity that you can use to start an investigation. The sums of money involved are quite significant, and it means we need to be able to pay through a channel which is trackable. Don't just hand over cash or do a mobile transaction and that's it. What we'd recommend is to be able to go through a bank. And once you're at the bank, then you have the chance to actually validate who owns that bank account. If it doesn't match with who the person or the name they've given you, then you already have a red flag that you can use to then take caution. Depending on what kind of apartment you're looking at, it might also make sense to just deal with a lawyer. Lawyers offer that service where they can look into the ownership of properties, they can look into who owns a specific house or whatever. So these are some of the things we can take, the precautions we can take. It's really about due diligence.
Well, so what are some of the red flags we should be looking out for?
So one classic one would be if you go, let's say, to the bank and they've given you a bank account to pay into, you can check when was this account created in the first place, what name is behind that bank account. And typically in one report we've had here, the account was created just a few days before the prospective client was contacted. That alone also tells you that something is up. If the person is really an established agent or landlord, why is the account just set up for you to pay into? So you may want to look a bit more closely into something like that. If you go into the area, you can also survey the kind of rent they are paying in the area. So you go to, let's say, your Tantra Hills. Let's, for example, say the average rent there is around 1,000 cedis a month, but you are being offered 300 or 400. That's a red flag.
So that's your caution, Stephen Seshikujo, giving us what to look out for in terms of the red flags. Let me bring in the head of public relations at the Rent Control Department, Emmanuel Hovey Bosu. We're grateful for your time here on Newsnight, sir. So I don't know if this particular fraud or the scamming that's going on when it comes to accommodation has been brought to your attention as a department. I don't know if you've had people coming to you with all kinds of concerns about this.
Hello, MFI, thank you for the opportunity. You know, what we've been advocating for, what we've been sensitizing the public is the issue of they should do due diligence. Okay? You know, most of the time, so almost all the time when they are negotiating, they don't involve rent control. You know, we have in our act, the rent control law under Section 4, that landlords should register their lease or tenancy even before they collect rent advance from tenants. If you permit me, under Section 4 of the Rent Control Law, it says every landlord of any residential accommodation referred to in this section of the law shall register with the Rent Control Department every lease or tenancy agreed in respect of such accommodation within 14 days of entry into such lease. And then 2, no landlord shall demand or receive from a tenant of any residential accommodation the rent in respect of such accommodation without complying with the provision under subsection 1. So without a tenancy agreement, no tenant is supposed to give a rent advance to any landlord. This is we are giving to landlords. And then the issue about due diligence, just as the cyber expert said, after you've gone to look at the place, after somebody has, the agents have led you to look at the premises, just go around Nicodemously and then verify, because the place is not an island. Definitely there will be people around. Make sure the person who is posing as an agent or is posing as a landlord is the rightful owner before you give money to. So the issue is that when such negotiations are going on, rent control are not involved. And this is a typical criminal offense. So rent control does not come in at this moment until the police refer the rent aspect to us.
But Hove, in some instance, in Bright Ewusi's case, for instance, as Maxwell describes it or narrates it to us, he went to the site and, of course, he saw the house owner and then also the person that took him there, and they showed him the house, gave him keys to the house, and he actually made payment. So then, how then do you verify again whether the person is actually the owner of the building?
Yes, so the verification will come in when you sign the tenancy agreement.
Okay.
So the caution is that you have to sign the tenancy agreement. Make sure your rights and responsibilities have been spelled out in the tenancy agreement. That of the landlord is also spelled out. You read it and understand it. If you can abide by them, then you can pay money. But because of the housing deficit, we understand the housing are too low for the population. So people are, I don't know the word to use, they are so hasty to get those accommodations. And as the experts also say, if you look at the environment and they are charging 1,000 cedis per month and somebody is offering you 200 cedis per month, it's a red flag that you have to be careful before. Money is very difficult to come by these days. So if somebody is posting as an agent or a landlord, then you should be very careful.
Well, let me quickly bring in, Ove, please stay with me. Let me quickly bring in the National Tenant, the General Secretary of the National Tenants Union of Ghana, Frederick Opoku. Frederick, thank you also for joining us here on Newsnight. It appears that as tenants, we are too desperate to do due diligence. I don't know if some of these issues have been brought to the attention of the union.
Very well. Thank you very much, Madam. Let me take this opportunity to thank all of you and to say a very big thank you to your platform for giving this opportunity to also express our view. Certainly, as we all are aware of, I believe issues of information education is very low, and people have taken advantage of the inactions and the actions of maybe the department responsible for ensuring that be able to put a lot more information and educate the public about what is happening to them, for them to know what is in it. For example, if you take a situation where we have rent control that is responsible to ensuring that at least landlords are able to register their tenancies. If you are a tenant and you need a place to even, the easiest way is to go to rent control and ask, do we have any vacancy there? Do you have any place that or offer something of that sort? Rent control aren't able to do what they ought to do as an agency responsible for ensuring that they can get a database of available vacant homes or accommodation. And I believe that the deficit of the house in this country has also created another serious vacuum where illegalities, people are perpetuating all kinds of illegality. Even landlords themselves are perpetuating illegality because of the loopholes. And that the rent control that is responsible to craft whip and able to do what is right, because they have a lot more to do than just settling disputes. That is where our problem has been.
Frederick, and to the extent that, Frederick, if you can hear me, to the extent that when we are going to rent these apartments, from what we've heard from the Rent Control, it doesn't look like we involve them. Did we even know that when we are going to rent an apartment, before we sign tenancy agreement and all, we ought to involve the Rent Control before doing all that? Did you even know that?
We don't know. That is why I'm talking about NCA, which are responsible for giving civic education to the populace and doing what they have to do. Rent control itself is not even organizing any seminar, any symposium, any workshop. When did you hear rent control organizing a program, educational program to educate the public about their rights and the obligations of the landlord? This is a clear responsibility of the rent control. But I don't blame them because they have been handicapped by irresponsible governments come and gone, who aren't want to even invest and give their resources that rent control ought to get. And that is what you'll be seeing.
Okay.
You see an impotent rent control that cannot even basic responsibility that is required by the law, the Rent Control Act of 220. Rent control is supposed to actually sensitize, let people know what they even do themselves. I can tell you, almost about 95% of tenants aren't aware about rent control and what they do. So therefore, whenever somebody throw about his any information around, anybody take it from the media, wherever, they pick it up because it is not regulated.
Okay. Frederick
themselves are alluding that because of the deficit of rent control, they have become handicapped. Because of the deficit, they aren't able to do what is right. But that for me is palpable false.
Okay, Frederick, I understand your frustration at this point, but I would plead that we choose our words carefully. And that's Fred Opoku, is the General Secretary of the National Tenants Union of Ghana. I'll give the final word to you, Emmanuel Hovekwesu. So you are the head of public relations. He's also on the other line with us, has been telling tenants to do their due diligence. But you've heard the Tenants Association. It appears most of them are not educated when it comes to this, apart from taking responsibility to do due diligence and when they have to go and rent apartments. It looks like the education is rather on the lower side. Do you agree?
MF, I agree. It's our responsibility to educate the public. I agree. But just as is mentioned, there are some logistical problems out there. But the underlying factor is when you are negotiating, you don't involve it. So the issue about due diligence is the key. That is the factor. Just as you mentioned, we are trying to do the sensitization, do the education. But the housing deficit is also key. Because even before the landlord moves out from his house, somebody is already at the doorstep looking for the accommodation. So they don't have the chance to come and register those vacant premises in our offices.
Okay.
And then the demand from tenants with this tenancy agreement is also key. We shouldn't be so anxious in paying money to dwell in somebody without taking the necessary documents. Those things will also help us to clamp down this kind of criminal activity.
We are grateful. I will engage further. We are grateful. That's the head of public relations at the Rent Control Department, Emmanuel Hovekwesu. So if you've ever been scammed, you know what to do. We've been hearing from the Rent Control, so the Tenants Association and the Cybersecurity Authority on this. Maxwell Abuba is available. You can send us your WhatsApp messages at 055-11-11997. So we help follow up on this for you, but be on the lookout. They are on online platforms and portraying that they are agents and landlords giving you some apartments. Please beware. Do some due diligence before parting with money. But there's one other issue that most of you have been talking about. Many Ghanaians are decrying the new digital transport fee for ride-hailing apps. Over the past 2 days or so, 3 days, Ghanaians are up in arms on social media with ride-hailing applications over a development which is affecting their cost of using the services. Maxwell is still with me in the studio. Maxwell, you've seen the email that was sent to these ride-hailing services. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so in this email captioned, your trip statement will now reflect a digital transport fee. It says, we remain committed to providing you with a safe, reliable and affordable transportation option. Effective 1st April 2023, we have introduced a new fee called the Digital Transport Fee DTF, which will apply to all rides in Ghana. The fee will be charged on all completed trips and it will be set at 1 Ghana cedi per trip. 1 Ghana cedi per trip. For transparency, the DTF will be displayed as a separate line item on your receipt. Thank you for... Okay, so that's the information. That was the email that was sent.
Is coming from
one of the ride-hailing services. And then we have a screenshot of what is happening now. So your receipts, you have the total there, and then they give you the composite, figure. So there's the fare, And then there's a booking fee, which is 1 cedi, and then there's the digital transport fee, 1 cedi, which is the new addition that we are talking about.
Okay, so we know that in 2019, the DVLA introduced a 60 Ghana cedi annual fee for ride-hailing platforms in Ghana. So this is the Ubers, the Yangos, the Bolts, amongst others. But the DVLA has just issued a statement addressing these particular concerns. Walk us through that statement.
Well, the DVLA is urging all digital transport operators to immediately cease the collection of such fees, the DTF. Let me give the details. It says the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority has observed reactions and concerns towards implementation of the digital transport guidelines, particularly with respect to fees charged by digital transport operators, and given various descriptions such as digital transport fee, booking fee, among others. All digital transport operators are to immediately cease collecting such fees. The authority would hold consultations with the Ministry of Transport and other stakeholders in the industry to ensure that any introductions are done with stakeholder input. And copied here, we have the country manager of Bolt, country manager of Uber, and then country manager of Yango. But this statement is signed by the chief executive of the DVLA, Kwesi Ajiman Buzia.
So collection of this particular fee
has been halted. Yeah.
Okay. So don't pay it. If you are in an Uber right now, you're in a Yango, you're in a Bolt, and they ask you to pay that, you're not supposed to pay it. According to the DVLA, they will hold further consultations on this issue before they continue the collection. George Uafe is here. I'm sure he'll provide further details on this from the world of business. Hello, George.
Hi.
I know you don't, you don't sit in Uber and like
no,
us.
I do, please. I've done it sometimes.
Okay.
And so it's not. Well, coming up in business, World Bank lowers Ghana's economic growth rate to almost 2% for this year compared to government's own projection of 2.8% for 2023. We'll also be telling you about the fact that the non-performing loans, that's in the total value of non-performing loans ending December last year, declines marginally to almost 15 billion Ghana cedis. But we're looking at what does it mean for prospective borrowers of loans or credit from these commercial banks out there. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Alliance Life and Ghana Pay. You're welcome back to Business on Newsnight. World Bank is projecting a lower economic growth for Ghana this year. This was captured in its Africa Pulse report released in Washington, D.C. in USA today. The bank in the report is projecting about 1.8% growth, lower than government's own 2.8% that it was hoping to achieve this year. The report tracked economic performances of the African countries when it comes to inflation, debt, and currency outlook as well. For some people, this might be interesting, and that shows that the World Bank is not that optimistic that economic activities will pick up that much this year. It also has implications for revenue mobilization. So what should we make of this development, and should we be worried about this? We've been engaging economist Dr. Patrick Esumi on this issue.
This is not surprising at all. If you look at the recent data we've seen on the Ghanaian economy, it clearly points to a further weakening in the real sector. So last month, when the Bank of Ghana released the current data on the economy, we saw that the real composite index of economic activity had declined. We've seen a huge decline in the month of January. And then we've also seen that the domestic debt exchange that we did has really weakened the financial strength of the banks. So it's going to limit the ability to support economic growth. And then we've also seen some of the policy measures that the Bank of Ghana has put in place by way of raising the policy rate. All of these are expected to affect business sentiment going forward. So it's not a surprise at all. It was expected by the end of the first quarter, we would have had the agreement approved, and then we could start, implementing. But that hasn't happened. Now, we also have to understand that even when the agreement is approved, it's going to take a while for us to, stabilize things before we start seeing the fortunes of the economy turn around. So this is more like a delay in when we start seeing recovery.
And Dr. Patrick Asumi, he is an economist, sharing his thoughts about the new World Bank projection for Ghana of about 1.8% in terms of economic growth for this year compared to government's own projection of 2.8%. Now, total value of loans that banks fear it would not be paid back on time reduced marginally. Bank of Ghana's data showed that it hit 14.8% compared to 15.2% in December 2021. But what has driven this marginal decline, and should we be excited about the current happenings in the banking industry? There's more in this report.
The data covers banking sector operations ending December last year. Therefore, one is not sure about the current situation on the market. However, for some market watchers, the amount is still on the high, looking at the current challenges that most of the banks are going through. The growth in the non-performing loans can be linked with the effect of COVID-19 on the operations of some businesses. That made it a little bit difficult for them to honor the loans. But a critical question here is about how this rising non-performing loans could impact on the cost of credit going forward. This is because most of the commercial banks in pricing their loans will factor this challenge. Coupled with the high policy rates and other factors, the cost of credit will definitely be going up in the coming days. The banks, on the other hand, have maintained that they are putting in place measures to ensure that these funds are recovered.
And that is a business desk report. Let's still stay on issues relating to loans, because the Bank of Ghana is asking banks and lenders to disclose full details about all terms covering loan agreement before the prospective borrowers are allowed to sign this deal. Now, this was captured in a notice released from the Bank of Ghana. And the bank is saying that prior to signing a loan agreement, lenders are required to give the potential borrowers a pre-agreement truth in lending statement, and that summarized the terms and conditions that is associated with these loans. Now, also advising borrowers that if you desire to pay off a loan earlier than scheduled, the lender should provide you with the full outstanding amount to be paid and allow you to have about 20 working days from the date of receipt of the written request in full repayment. You may also be charged an early settlement penalty fee. However, this should not exceed 0.25% of the principal amount of the loan that you are supposed to pay. So, for some advice for you there, the Bank of Ghana is talking about the fact that before you sign that loan agreement, you need to disclose everything to you covering that facility. Nothing should be hidden. And also, if you intend to settle the thing earlier than this, you should be given some 20 working days from the date of the receipt of that written request. And it's more of enhancing transparency when it comes to borrowing and giving you, more of a good value and some favorable terms to pay these facilities, rather than them coming to your office, seizing your assets and doing all those things. So the Bank of Ghana has some advice for borrowers and lenders out there. Now, there's also the big question about whether the president can do anything with respect to the current push with respect to those three key revenue measures. We've been trying to get some answers from industry experts and all those things about what he can do. And let's hear from Gideon Ayew. He is a partner at accounting firm Deloitte.
Yeah, and that's what I shared earlier, that based on my understanding, Parliament has passed the law. It is left, the only thing the president can do now is to assent to it. Based on the Constitution, a tax bill cannot be rejected or it cannot be vetoed, as we have with the other general type of bills presented to the president. So unless another repeal is sent and then we have a new law, from my understanding, this is bound to become law based on the dates of which is assented as well as gazetted.
And that's Gideon Ayew. He is a tax partner at Deloitte, telling us that quite a difficult situation in terms of the push for the terms should be varied and all the rest. And so let's see how things will pan out and see whether maybe the president could delay signing those bills and see what will happen. And that's all for business on Newsnight. Back to you, MFA.
Thank you very
much. The issue
much.
about the loans, got you excited, right?
Yes. Very excited about
give
it.
borrowers some fair terms when it comes to paying these loans and even negotiating the deals with these banks and financial institutions out there.
Transparent about it. So great timing of that particular statement. Thank you very much, George. Some of you have been interacting with us also on our earlier story about that fraud alert of people wanting accommodation and how they've been scammed. And this one says, this is from Kay in Spintex. It says, this happened to my friend and her family about 6 years ago. In our situation, we met the supposed landlord in his house. After we paid and they disappeared, returned to this house, and it happens that no one stayed there. The owners were outside Ghana. As for the apartment we wanted to rent, it was really up for rent, but these guys posed as agents. We lost 35,000 cedis. Case remains unsolved after we reported it to the police. Well, that's a sad situation. We have this one from Knowledge in Ho. It says, this rent app or whatever they call it is a total waste of our money. Why can't the government equip the rent control agency enough to do their work? And how many landlords did rent control prosecute for taking more than the 6 months the law talks about? I'm sure you're referring to the National Rental Assistance Scheme. Well, let's talk. Wilson also has a message, and it says, President Akufo-Addo. Okay, so it's talking about concerns about the IMF. Okay, I get it. And Francis also says NPP will never see anything wrong with appointing their members to the EC. We need fair-minded people at such sensitive constitutional positions. Well, you're commenting on our top story today. And Kofi Seidu also is talking about the rent issue, and it says rent control is financially anemic, and that has made them a toothless bulldog when it comes to executing their mandate as a state agency. The rent control department should be scrapped. That's Kofi Seidu's message. Well, let's turn our attention to other stories. It's been the ECG, that's the Electricity Company of Ghana, embarking on that revenue generation drive for the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, and we've been bringing you that. Tonight is the turn of the Ghana Water Company, and they are also going after their debtors as it targets various companies in the Nungwa district. In today's exercise, led by the managing director of the company himself, Dr. Clifford Brimer, one factory was disconnected from the national water supply grid over non-payment of bills to the tune of 163,000 Ghana cedis. Well, my colleague Jacqueline and Sumayebwa was with the team. Here's her report.
This has been one of the major national exercises by the Ghana Water Company Limited to retrieve 680 million Ghana cedis owned by its customers. The team took to the Nungwa district to recover a debt of 4.7 million Ghana cedis. Printers, Walker Building System, U-Fresh Company and Kata Company Limited were the major defaulters. Out of the four, Beverage Factory U-Fresh Company Limited was disconnected over non-payment of bills worth 163,000 Ghana cedis. Managing Director for Ghana Water Company, Dr. Clifford Brimer, cautioned staff not to spare any defaulters.
We should not be thinking for the customer. Let the customer think for themselves. Some of them will say that because there's no flow in our pipes, we are not going to pay. We are not a prepaid company. We are a postpaid.
Textile manufacturing company Printers owes Ghana Water over 3 million Ghana cedis. They paid half of the amount. Dr. Clifford Brimer believes this is in the right direction.
Printers was recategorized because they have two product lines here. One line for printing the fabrics, and the second one is for their drinks. There's Frutali and Calipo. And we recategorized them, and the unit rates went higher. So they were disputing that they didn't understand why we should put them on the higher rate instead of on the lower rate. And for us, we are looking at balancing and making sure that we are able to generate the revenue for our operations. But the subsequent review from February, they are up to date, and so we came to talk about the arrears.
The Ghana Water Company Limited's connection exercise is still ongoing, and it is expected to continue until all debts have been paid off. Jacqueline Ansumayebwe's report for Joy News.
Let me bring in the Director of Communications of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Mr. Stanley Mate. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsnight. So you're looking to retrieve about what? Over 680 million Ghana cedis, correct?
800 million Ghana cedis.
600 million Ghana cedis.
800 million Ghana
Okay, 800 million. Great. Well, so you started with the Nungwa area. Is it a nationwide exercise or is it just based in the Greater Accra region?
Yes, MFR is a nationwide exercise. The 800 million cedis is arrears owed the GWCL by customers nationwide. So we are all out in all districts, all regions to ensure that this money is retrieved. So initially, our districts and our regions will go out every month to do their revenue mobilization exercise. But from January to now, we realize that there has been an increase in our debt, and this has necessitated the head office and then directors from the head office to join the regions and the districts to enable us to retrieve all our arrears or the GWCL. It's seriously affecting our operations. We are also owing ECG, we are owing our chemical supplies and all that. Okay, so if we are unable to retrieve this amount, it's going to affect our operations. And that is one of the main reasons why we have joined the districts in retrieving the arrears. Thank you.
And I know today's exercise focused on the Nungwa district and the Nungwa area and its environs. What would you say, what's the operation like today in that area?
Yes, I think it was successful. At least we had the opportunity to educate some of our customers and then also to retrieve some of our monies. And then at least it has taught us some lessons. And so management has some feedback which will help us improve on our policies.
Mr. Mate, we are grateful. That's Mr. Stanley Mate, is the communications director for the Ghana Water Company Limited, and Musbao is here with the latest from the world of sports. Hello, Musbao.
Yes, Emefa, good evening. And of course, it's the Ghana Premier League which returns tonight, and is the outstanding fixture between Asante Kotoko and Kenfaizo, which is slated to come off today. Just in some 6 minutes' time, the Porcupine Warriors had the home fixture postponed last month as the Barra Stadium was closed ahead of Ghana's African Cup of Nations qualifier against Angola. The Popcorn Warriors are looking to add to their 4-0 win last weekend and move to second position with a win over their city rivals. Kotoko beats Real Tamale United with a 4-0 scoreline at the Barra Stadium last Sunday, with Stephen Mukwala returning to the score sheet. Well, coach of the side, Abdul Gazelle, has been speaking.
Well, we're picking the matches one after the other. We're not going to joke with that particular match because whilst we are playing, we are looking at the league table. Currently, we will come to 5th place, and definitely, if you are able to win that particular match, we may shoot up to either the second position or the third position. So it's also a must-win match for us. We'll go into the match with the necessary approach in order to get that particular 3 maximum points.
And for Kenfaizo, they have appointed Ignatius Osei-Fosu as the new head coach for the rest of the season. Ignatius joins the Inshallah boys, having previously coached Liberty Professionals, 11 Wonders, Mediama Sporting Club, and most recently Dreams FC. The new gaffer is expected to be on the touchlines when Kenfaizo play at Santa Kotoko later tonight. So, for that's it. And just some interesting happenings in Europe. It's Lukaku who suffered some racist chant in their game yesterday against Juventus, and it's become quite a topical issue in Italy at the moment.
This time it will be dealt with decisively.
They're trying to fish out the perpetrators of it, because sometimes it's difficult to fish out which fan really did that. But we'll keep tabs on that. And Chelsea, we are just close to appointing Frank Lampard as interim coach. So we wait to see just till June, and we'll try.
Do you eat out a lot, though?
What?
Do you eat out a lot at restaurants?
Not really. Not really.
Okay.
I do a lot of home. Yeah, I do cook.
Or they cook for you?
I cook.
Okay, you cook. Okay, well, we are told not to be fooled by the plush frontage of eateries. Well, that's the caution from the environmental health officers at the Accra Metropolitan Authority Assembly, I beg your pardon, who are asking patrons of eateries to look out for the sanitary conditions in the kitchen as well. Our latest checks show that some eateries invest more in their frontage and little attention is paid to food safety. Well, during our Clean Ghana campaign for today, they visited some kitchens, and what they found was very disturbing. My colleague Michael Ashali has more.
At first glance, you'd see a serene and relatively clean eating area.
The kitchen, however, was dirty, according to the AMA officials. That's the situation at this restaurant at Mamprobi Sempe.
So it means you have made your entrance nice, but where the food is actually coming from is faulty. So we are going to summon you for failing to comply with food safety standards.
The inspection showed that the eatery was nothing close to clean after all. District Environmental Health Officer of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly and team lead George Lawson wants patrons to be vigilant while eating at any eatery.
After this thing is emptied, it's not clean, it's not washed, and it doesn't have any cover. So flies from here will go to the kitchen.
Eateries and food businesses, patrons are encouraged to be vigilant and report any concerns to the appropriate authorities. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
Well, so that's our Clean Ghana campaign for today. You want to catch the whole encounter on the Joy News channel in a bit, in just about 2 minutes on the Joy News channel. You get to catch it, and you see that you have to be very, very careful at the places that you eat from. Well, let's put climate in focus now. And Ghana's north is one of the places battered heavily by climate change. The intense dryness for most of the year has been partly blamed on the lack of trees in many places. Well, in today's edition of Climate Focus, correspondent Albert Sori traces the work of the Regreening Africa initiative in the village of Galaka.
Women in the Boko West district are determined to combat desertification so they can also enjoy a friendlier climate in their communities. The Galaka community near Zebila, where the Regreening Africa project supported the community to fence a 3-hectare land for a plantation.
We've been able to raise onions. That is what we use to sell to pay our children's school fees. We use it for our...
That's our climate focus. And just before we head out here on Newsnight is the end of another era for a popular police officer. COP Nathan Kofi Boakye retires today after more than 30 years of service. He's noted for his strong views, making controversial arrests of musicians like Kwao Kese, Shatta Wale, and former local government minister Maxo Kofi Juma. Listen.
All those involved in this bank bullion robbery, and especially those who committed it last week, they will be arrested very soon. They can run and run and run, but they cannot hide.
The tough-talking commissioner of police is a lawyer, biochemist, and a trained ballistics expert from the Metropolitan Police Support Services, United Kingdom. He has been a man of the uniform since the late 80s.
I had read a lot of books like James Hadley Chase, Agatha Christie, and especially James Hadley Chase. A book like Vulture is a Patient Bed, and all those books helped me to develop investigative acumen from the infancy. So it came naturally that after university, either I could have been a military officer or a police officer.
He was interdicted in 2006 on the recommendations of the Georgina Wood Committee, which was set up to investigate the loss of 77 parcels of cocaine on board a vessel MV Benjamin. He was reinstated in 2009 and has since been a leading voice on corruption and improving upon the police service.
But my job is to maintain law and order. My job is to curtail impunity. My job is to be the advocate of the oppressed and the vulnerable. And my job is to be fair to everyone. So if you commit offense, no matter who you are, you have to go to the process.
His years of service has seen him occupy many positions, including working in a lab to leading regional commands like Ashanti Region and Police Prosecution and Research Department.
Saying that police is corrupt is so easy, because these are the people you see outside. Who else do you see outside? One man's corruption can dupe the country for about $10 million. And police corruption, one city. So is it the quantum or the numbers?
He was on many occasions tipped to become an IGP. Kofi Boakye retires today.
Our system endorses corruption. Look at all our proverbs. Researching your down at Tafre, and Ibo Kutrim. Researching your down this on Sayem. Diabatabu and Ituekana. A Seneca Boko. No one says on them. Ubi Padia Kokotokwa and Yana Bro. Are these not corrupt proverbs?
Buache taking us out of tonight's edition of News Night. Strong and sassy with Inimwa Inimado. Is that
Hi, MFR.
Hello, Inimwa. You're looking good. Masculinity.